The world is radically changing. And if you are someone that has multiple different interests, passions, loves, there's this really unique opportunity that you have in front of you right now, whereby you can pursue multiple different interests and also multiple different domains of life, body, mind, soul, and also externally, family, friends, socializing and community, rather than just choosing and focusing on one thing. And my name is Joe Yuli. I'm a philosopher. I'm absolutely obsessed with vocations and paths and callings. That's why I'm here on places like YouTube, Substack. That's why I host a podcast called the Career Archetypes podcast. That's why I have this community whereby I guide students through this process to choose the right career path with conviction by unearthing their very own career archetype, because it's my belief that every single person in this world has a calling. And to not live out our calling leaves us this sense of resentment and regret. And yet pursuing it gives us a sense of meaning and fulfillment and this knowing that I did everything that I was meant to do in this lifetime. And over the past year, 18 months, I've noticed that there is this new era that is upon us, and we're in it right now. And this new era is and has certain different ideas coming through. It has this technological progress coming through. And it has this complete shift to what we're used to when it comes to understanding our place in the world, our culture that we're in, and the collective sphere. And maybe you've noticed it too. Maybe you've noticed it intuitively. Maybe you've noticed it in the same way that I did, just by feeling out the waters. Or maybe you came to your conclusion in a more logical or reasonable route, looking at different statistics, such as the ones that came out on the 2025 Economic Forum. I think they just put out basically a full rundown of insights of their breakdown on statistics as to where the economy is going over the next 5 or so years. And so maybe you came to your conclusions that way. However you came to your conclusions, you would be noticing that something's going on, something different is happening. And because something different is happening, a lot of people are sort of taking a position on what's happening. And I've seen two different sides beginning to develop. On one side, we have a lot of people that are fearing what's going to happen. They don't want to adapt to what's going on. There's this underlying anxiety and fear and worry that people are going to come in and robots are going to come in and take their jobs. They're going to take them away from them. They're going to be displaced and they're going to lose a sense of meaning, a sense of direction. They're not going to be able to go back into the workforce because they can't upskill properly. And there's a big worry across the board. And this is basically in every single sector across the industry, right? It's going and hitting people that are working in law, accountants, people that are working in the creative spheres. It's everywhere, and people are worrying about their jobs. And then we have another side whereby people are saying that this is amazing, this is great, this is the best thing for us. We need to begin to collaborate with technology, to integrate it into whatever we're doing. Otherwise, we're going to be left behind. And so you see this sort of split that is occurring at the moment. And I actually wanted to present a little bit of an alternative point of view, because this kind of split, whilst both points of view have information to listen to and to understand, to get more clarity about the situation, there's actually a third point of view. And I think it's really relevant to anybody that has multiple different interests, that is a curious human being, that sees themselves as someone that wants to do many things in this lifetime. And this new era seems to be opening up a way in which they can actually go about this, which is why I think it's the absolute perfect time for anybody that is a multi-passionate person to start to look at this new era as a way to begin to pursue something that maybe they haven't pursued in the past. And so we have this old worldview. And the old worldview is, hey, you need to go ahead and commit to one thing, and you do that one thing in an excellent way. And by doing that one thing in an excellent way, you'll get paid, you'll be able to support your family, you'll be able to put a roof over your head, you'll be able to pay the bills, and also you'll be able to afford a home, you'll be able to go on holiday, you'll be able to support your family. And so there's this underlying, hey, commit to one thing, and by doing that, it's going to provide for you. Now, you can have hobbies, but you can't really bring those hobbies into that one thing because it's going to taint it, and it's not going to allow you to properly support your pursuit. And this is changing, and it's changing fast, and it's changing drastically. And this is coming in with this new era. And this old way of seeing it is, if you can imagine a painter who's trying to paint a masterpiece and they only have one color. Now, I do know that there are particular paintings out in the world whereby someone does paint a masterpiece with only one color. I'm not saying that that can't be done. However, imagine all of the amazing masterpieces that couldn't happen purely because people were only allowed to paint with one color. This is what we've been doing for the past multiple hundreds of years. And we can simply look back to the industrial period and say to ourselves, well, maybe that's where we started to go into the specialist mode. And by going to the specialist mode, we ended up losing this ability to be these multifaceted humans. Now, like I mentioned, things are changing. And because of this new era, one of the interesting things that's happening is that not only is technology progressing, but ideas are changing as well. And one of the big ideas that I've seen is shifting is this idea around longevity. Now, that's really important because when we start to get into this idea of longevity and how long can we live for and how long can we actually survive for, it changes the amount of time that we're able to spend on Earth pursuing a particular craft. Now, one of the things that multi-passionate people typically struggle with is they say, I don't have enough time to pursue all the things that I want to pursue. Now, imagine that your time frame on this life suddenly gets extended by 100 years. If it gets extended by 100 years, suddenly you have way more time to do way more things, and you're then starting to think differently as well. You're starting to think with a longer term view. Now, the oldest person in the world hasn't broken. I don't think it's gone over 120 years old. But even still, right, that's a time frame, that's a restriction that says, hey, you're probably not going to live that long. And even if you are going to live that long, how much of that time is spent really being able to do things in a vibrant, energetic, even youthful way? Most people would say, well, not much of that time. However, there are people that are starting to look at pushing past those boundaries, and life expectancy is only going up. And so longevity changes our outlook as to what can be accomplished within one singular lifetime. So we're pushing on time in one component over here with longevity, but there's another thing that's happening when it comes to time, which is efficiency is changing. And so you'll see with this influx of technology that things are speeding up, the amount of work or manual labor that has to get done is changing, so much so that people are getting pulled out of different roles because a computer can take its place. And whilst there's definitely downsides to this, for multi-passionate people, it can often mean that there's more efficiency there so they can speed up what it is that they want to be doing, or they can do less of certain things so they can spend more time doing things that they actually want to be doing. So a great example of this is the new robots. I think they're the Tesla robots that are coming in, and they can come in and basically, I don't know if they can do your dishes, but we're going to get to a point whereby robots can come in and do your dishes, saving you 20, 30 minutes every single day over your lifespan is going to amount to a lot of time. And that's going to happen in all these different areas of your life. And so time is what humans are after. It's getting extended. And for multi-passionate people, this is a massive plus, which allows them to not only use this time to pursue many different things, but it also allows their interests to mature, because typically multi-passionate people require a lot of maturation when it comes to their various different interests in order to see serious benefits from these particular pursuits. Which also leads me to this wide-ranging capability that multi-passionate people have, which is only going to be more and more needed. This ability to not only create, but ideate, bring up different ideas, to see these different interconnections on different things whilst they're observing the world, is going to be something that is going to continue to empower them in terms of their vocation. And the other really unique idea here is that because there's more time on the table, because things are getting more efficient, there's more room for them to be able to not only engage with different interests, but engage with their life in a new way, whereby they're able to do deep introspective work. They're also able to have deep, meaningful relationships. They're also able to be amongst their community or whichever communities that they're involved with. And that's going to continue to feed into a meaningful existence. Now, this leads me to this idea of this new ideal that is appearing with this new era. And so gone are the days whereby someone can have a poor family life, poor relationships, poor health, bad, community presence, and sort of gloss it all over with some form of achievement within their work that's no longer being idolized in the way that it used to be idolized. And instead, the new ideal that's coming forward is this holistic human, this person that not only has a great work life, but also sorts out their own internal world, right? They're not just going to allow their demons to constantly cause them to make poor decisions, but they're going to work on that stuff. They're going to go ahead and make sure that their physical being is well looked after and nurtured. They're going to make sure that the relationships that they have with their parents, with wife or husband, boyfriend, girlfriend, whatever it is, are proper, are good, are deep, are sorted out. They're also going to make sure that their intellect is being fed. They're also going to make sure that their spiritual life is being fed. Right? So there is this new form of ideal, which I think is actually a better ideal than what we have had in the past in culture, which is pointing people towards like, hey, be a fuller, deeper, richer human, which requires multiple different elements of your own personal life and experience. Meaning that this idea of specialization, we can go to the Adam Smith and the pin analogy, whereby he said that in order to get maximum efficiency, we basically need to get a lot of people working on separate parts of the process, and they just get really, really good at their particular part of the process. And we'll call those people these specialists, and that's going to allow us to have tremendous output. This way of life is no longer the way of life of this new era. Instead, people are looking at that and saying there's something wrong with that. And, to Adam Smith's defense, he did say that doing this kind of work would inevitably lead to someone having to do this monotonous work, whereby it's not going to be the most inspiring or fulfilling work, but it is going to create the most output. And us as humans are looking at this and saying like, hey, we don't just want to create output, and especially if there are technological progress coming along and taking hold and saying that we'll do a lot of output, we're going to be pivoting to other areas of life, human areas of life. And this is another thing that's happening now, and why, again, multi-passionate people are perfectly situated for it. It's because they're asking like, why can't we, right? So what I mean by this is a lot of the times a sacrifice is required, and it's sort of been presented to us in this way. Hey, if you want to run a business, you can't have a really great family life. Hey, if you want to go ahead and pursue this particular academic calling at its highest level, then you're probably going to neglect your health. Hey, if you want to get this mass applause or massive public validation, then hey, you might end up missing out on particular family events. However, this new era is asking people to say, why can't we? So why can't we have a business and good health? Why can't we have a rich academic life and a rich spiritual life? Why can't we have a great family life and a great spiritual life and be healthy and be connected with our kids or our wider family or our calling, or be nurturing our intellect, or be nurturing our emotional life? Like, why can't we have it all? Which really speaks to the direction of where things are going, where people are wanting to do many different things in many different ways and nurturing many different areas of their life. And they're saying like, hey, I don't know if I want to be a specialist anymore. I don't know if this singular-minded approach is actually the correct one. And they're starting to doubt it. And this also has the feelings of this new renaissance brewing underneath, meaning that you want to really be preparing for this new era. And I want to tell you the golden rule to take on board in order to properly prepare for this era. And so the golden rule is focus on what won't change. And I know that's actually going to be quite hard because everyone in the world is talking about AI, UBI, crypto, ChatGPT. They're talking about longevity, manipulating gene sequences, talking about the way in which geopolitical ideas are evolving and how they're going to be shaping the future. They're talking about how social media networks are changing and there's going to be AI profiles on there. There's so much noise about what's changing that the golden rule, in order to stay solid during this period, in order to properly pursue your calling in a way that feels deeply good and correct and right for you, in a way where you're able to actually feed all these different parts of yourself. So if you have different interests, you can feed all those different interests, is to focus on what won't change, what is not going to change. And so the love that you have for your son or your daughter or your mom or your dad or your brother and your sister, that's not going to change. How fast time moves, that's not going to change. Being someone that is curious and interested in many different things, that is not going to change. And so there are all these different things that are not going to change, even though we're in this period whereby change is afoot and change is real and change is on the loose. And so being aware of what won't change will help you to stay and navigate the course, which is why I want to share what I think is not going to change. And I think that human-made is not going to change. And what I mean by this is I believe that people are going to want to receive things from real people, and I don't think that's going to change. Now, what I do think is going to change is the amount of which people take from other humans, meaning that people are going to buy from these different companies and organizations where there really is maybe even no employees there and they're just getting serviced by robots. That's going to happen. It's already happened. However, there is going to be this segmentation. And I first saw this actually on Instagram the other day, whereby the Instagram CEO essentially came on Instagram and said aloud to everybody that, hey, we're going to start to bring out this new filter system whereby Instagram Reels are going to be filtered in such a way where you can have any environment in your background. You can be anywhere. You could be in Antarctica, you can be in this high up treehouse, you can be on the moon, and this filter system is going to allow you to basically put yourself into any environment. And I went into the comments and, I was quietly happy and surprised by seeing that a lot of people were in there quite aggressively saying that they didn't want this, or at the very least, what they did want is some sort of segmentation between this is made by AI and this is made by a human, or this was not touched by AI. A clear distinction between the two. And this, I think, is going to come in heavy and hard, whereby people are going to need to express that, hey, this was done by a human, or hey, this was done by AI, and we'll be able to tell people that, hey, my work is purely human, it's purely from and without the tainting of some sort of external technology in such a way where people begin to be like, oh, this doesn't sound like you, this isn't you, and noting this will be really important moving forward. The other thing that's not going to change is that humans need connection with others. They need connections with loved ones, with family, with communities. I read a statistic that communities are growing by 24% as an annual growth rate, meaning that every year it grows by around 25%. Which means that it's just increasing and it's growing and it's rapid and people are wanting to connect. Now, that was an online community statistic. However, from conversations that I've been having with other people, they're also looking at real physical communities outside of any sort of online sphere. And so people are very much desiring connection. We really saw this during the pandemic, where so many people were really craving human connection, and that's not going to change. No amount of companionship robot is going to change whether or not someone's going to feel that sense of connection. Now, I bring this up because a lot of people that I work with are involved in the service industry, are involved with other humans, and this understanding that the human connection is something that can't be taken away because you have human blood in your veins is something to think about, is something to build on, because it's something that can't be taken away. And the other thing that's not going to change is if you are interested in multiple different things, if you have lots of different curiosities, if you want to do multiple different things throughout your lifetime, that's not going to change. And anything that comes out over the next couple of years can help you to really build a life whereby you are able to pursue your many different interests. And so the way that I like to think about this is, if you can imagine that you're a farmer who really only has one season to properly nurture and grow their crops. And so they have to choose a particular type of crop, and they've got to go through the 4 seasons. And after that time period's done, then that's it. What this increase in time has done, which is going to come forward, and like I mentioned, the efficiency and the longevity, it's given you more time and more tools to have more seasons. and see all of your multiple interests as many different crops. And you now have the opportunity to grow more crops, multiple different times, over multiple different seasons. And it's simply up to you as to making sure that you utilize this extra time well, rather than being worried that, hey, which one should I do? It's like you can probably do more than one now, definitely, because this new era is upon us. And the final thing that is not going to change is this idea that your story, your life, your personal experiences are your own. The things that you've already experienced in your lifetime, from when you were born to right now, they're not going to change. They're in the memory bank, they've happened. And so if you were to have gone through a car crash and you had a paradigm shift post-car crash and a realization or a revelation, that stuff is something that you have experienced and it's not going to change. You experienced that thing that happened to you, and no robot can come through and say like, hey, I was in a car crash and I had a paradigm shift, because it's not there, it's not real, they didn't go through it. And the same way that if somebody was to have a synchronous moment whereby they bumped into a friend out of the blue, it's like, oh, you're from high school, I haven't seen you in 10 plus years. That out of the blue moment where they experience that, once again, is part of their story. And so you have a unique story. You have things that have happened to only you. And if you start to understand that that's a part of your advantage in this period, and that nobody else can take that away from you, you are building on something that's not going to change. And whilst there's going to be a lot of anxiety, fear, worry when it comes to all of this technology coming through, all these different novel ideas that are going to be hitting the collective sphere, remember that not only should you focus on what won't change, but there's never been a better time to be someone that is interested in multiple different things and to be able to actually go out there and pursue them at a high level. Now, if you are interested in learning more about how I help people to choose the right career path with conviction by unearthing the career archetype, then I'll go ahead and leave a link underneath whereby you can go ahead and look at our community full of members who are doing exactly that. And so in that community, I have an 8-week course that walks people through this process of knowing what their calling is. And I use multiple different lenses in order to help people to gather the correct self-knowledge in order to properly identify what their very own career archetype is. There is a list of over 450 career archetypes in there as well. So we don't just use like a 12 or 18 career archetype system. There is hundreds of career archetypes, and many students end up unearthing career archetypes that aren't even on the list. And so if you're interested in that, I'll leave a link underneath, and I'll see you inside.